All right. Let's get this journey going. So again, my name is Marisally Santiago, and I'm here to speak to you about something I'm very passionate about. So I'll give you a warning. I'm Puerto Rican, which means I'm loud and I speak fast. Also, when I get very excited, I get louder and faster. So it is okay. I have had people do this. I will not be offended if I get too fast and you're like, wait, stop, hold on, what? Just go like this. And if I see you, I will slow down. Okay? If I don't see you, just come closer or have somebody else do this and then I'll slow down. So we're going to talk about youth as protagonists. And in order to begin, I'm gonna have at least one of the MCs come out into the audience and see what do you understand from the term protagonist. It's not new. It's been around now for some time. But I want to begin with where you are. So just raise your hand. And she will come over and I can hear you. Volunteer number 1, yes.
Protagonist being that the young person in front of you is the lead in their story. And so you meet them where they are and accompany them from there.
Here we go. They're a lead in their story. Awesome. Anyone else?
Ones who invite others, who invite their peers to join them and move ahead and follow along.
Yeah, one who invites others and their peers. Third one? We're Trinitarian. I got to go with 3. I can't do not less than 3. There we go. We got somebody else.
With their generation, usually they are the influencers.
Yes, they're influencers. All of those are true. They are a lead in their story. They are influencers. They invite others. So it does imply an action. It does imply other things. So we're going to take a look at what exactly in the dictionary, because I like to go to the dictionary, because language goes with culture. And so if we want to change culture, we have to speak the right language, and we have to make sure we're speaking, all of us, the same language when we say the things that we say. So in the dictionary, it says that a protagonist is the leading character or one of the major characters in a drama, movie, novel, or fictional text. A second definition that goes with that is an advocate or champion of a particular cause or idea. So this is obviously, protagonist is a literary term. So this is what it means in terms of literature. Now, the key to this is they don't write their own story. They star in a story. Their drama and choices move the story towards the end that the author intends. See where I'm going with this? Right? Where the author intends. They advocate and champion the author's intentions. They star in a story, but that story belongs to the person that writes it. They start in it. They participate in it. They are key to moving the story forward. If the protagonist doesn't act, doesn't do, the story doesn't go anywhere. Usually we call those movies boring, right? They're very exciting when the protagonist is involved in making an action. They make a decision. Whether they're right or they're wrong, the plot moves forward because of the protagonist. So they're key. But the story and the intention behind the story belongs to the author. Belongs to the author. So God is the author as the creator, right? He is the author. It is the story of salvation. He is the author of it. And we, in his goodness, have been called to participate in that story, to be key players in that story. What does that mean? Just like the boring movie, if the protagonist doesn't move forward, the plot just sort of dies and sizzles. Ourselves too. If you don't act, if I don't act, if we don't help our young people act as the protagonist, as a key person in moving the story of salvation forward, the story goes flat, right? The story goes flat. So it's very important. Yes, missionary discipleship is, you could say it's another term for protagonist. The nuance with protagonism is that aspect that I am key, and if I don't act, the story doesn't move. Not that God isn't bigger than me, but you know what I mean, right? So, I want to offer you a definition of protagonism. This is from the Marisally Santiago dictionary. It's coming out soon. Protagonism is leaning into my agency as a human person. So leaning implies an action, right? Leaning into my agency as a human person created with free will. I am not a puppet, right? I'm not a robot. I'm not AI, right? I am a human person created with free will, freely choosing the way of grace. I choose the way of grace, and I'm placing my gifts and talents at his service in accordance with his will for his glory. So to be a protagonist, to exercise my protagonism, I first need to know that I have free will, but that freedom was given, I think JP2, freedom for excellence, to be placed at his service for his glory. Because at the end of the day, he's the writer of the story. Bishop Barron, which we just saw, I love, my husband and I love to listen to Bishop Barron. I love his whole thing with ego drama and theodrama. You guys heard that? Ego drama and theodrama. So the ego drama means my script, my goals, my spotlight. Life is about me. I write it, I direct it, I produce it, I star in it, I edit it. I'm like, all the things, right? The theodrama is God's story, God's mission, right? God's plan. So an ego drama means I am focused on myself. Theodrama is I am focused with God. It is about God. It is about something bigger. And a protagonist understands that it's not an ego drama that they're living. It's a theodrama that they're in, that they're starting in. Now, Jesus is the Father's protagonist per excellence. He is the protagonist in the story of salvation, right? We know this. Scripture from beginning to end speaks of Christ. Everything is about Christ. He was there, thanks to John 1:3. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came to be through him, and without him nothing came to be. But we are invited to participate in his protagonism. So that's even wilder, because it's not my individual protagonism. I am participating in Christ's protagonism. We do everything through, with, and in Jesus, conformed to the image of Christ. By the power and work of the Holy Spirit, we become more like Christ's. So that means we become more perfect images of the protagonist of the salvation story that God is writing. So, what does that mean? When we encounter Christ, it's a threefold encounter. In Jesus, we encounter the love of the Father. And in this threefold encounter, we encounter the love of the Father, we encounter ourselves, and we encounter the other. I see who God is. Yesterday, Randy talked about humility. Another definition that I've heard of humility is to know who I am, knowing who I am before him. Right? So I acknowledge God as who he is, and then I encounter myself. First and foremost, I realize I am not God. Right? I am not God. And in that love and in that outpouring, I realized, but he's made me for mission. He helps me see the other. Because if that's God and this is me, then you and I are the same. And that's actually what propels us and fuels mission, is the acknowledgement that the other is like me. So at the heart of protagonism, it wants acknowledgement of who God is, who I am, and why I was made. Not that we get this from the very beginning when we start to engage our young people in enacting their protagonism. We grow into it, but it has to begin with that aspect that I acknowledge who God is, I acknowledge who I am, and who the other is. And that's what actually propels me to mission. Pastoral Juvenil Hispana and Pope Francis. So the term protagonist was kind of made famous in the U.S., so to speak, by Pope Francis's, and Bishop Aaron talked about this in the video, Christus Vivit, written in 2019. I tell everyone, if you do ministry with young people, you should have the Bible, that's first. Second, Christus Vivit, and now listen, teach, send, right? Those are your three. But Christus Vivit kind of made protagonism and a word like accompaniment sort of buzzwords in the U.S. These are not new, right? So coming from a Pastoral Juvenil Hispana background, that's my experience as a youth, as a young adult. And then here in the Archdiocese, I was able to coordinate that for 3 years as a volunteer, and then that was one of my official roles as Associate Director in this office here. Pastoral Juvenil Hispana, acompañamiento and protagonismo are key concepts. That is the core, that is at the heart of how we walk with young people. Acompañamiento, to walk with, and protagonismo, to enact and to engage, to activate their sense of being people who are sent on mission, who are capable of major renewal in the world. Now, in the USCCB Listen, Teach, Send framework, it says, this is in page 38, the church has long recognized that the young are excellent evangelists and witnesses of the gospel among their peers. Now, why is this important? Why is protagonism important? So again, it's coming from a Latin American experience of Pope Francis, that is Pastoral Juvenil Hispana. Key to Hispanic spirituality is the fact that Hispanic spirituality is very incarnational. In Pastoral Juvenil, we don't say, I want to lead young people to Jesus. Because incarnational means that God is already there. What we actually do is we try to help the young person recognize the God that's present, the Jesus that is present, right? So we talk about phrases like Dios en lo cotidiano, God in the everyday. God is already there. We don't have to go search him out. We don't have to go lead you somewhere. He is present in you. He is present in every person. He is present in every circumstance of life. And therefore, because he is present, that's why acompañamiento is not a me leading you, it is me with you, because it is, I am God to you, I am Jesus to you, and you're God, you're Jesus to me. In protagonism, because it is incarnational, it is God who is present to us and Jesus who sanctified the human experience. Jesus humanized, blessed the human experience by becoming human himself. I'm going to read it better from a document called Incarnational Spirituality, and it says, God draws close to us through Jesus Christ, who lived as one of us and is still present and active in creation. As a result, we are able to find God more clearly in our daily life in the created world. And it says, by becoming human, Jesus sanctified all human living. Our actions, united with his, contribute to his ongoing work of redemption. Isn't that wild? I think that's wild. I do laugh, though, because in Christus Vivit, Pope Francis talks about the whole first part of the book. It's on Jesus. And he talks about this very thing about Jesus sanctifying that stage of life of being youth and being young adults, because he lived as a youth and young adult himself. And I think about, well, what happens when you're up, like, beyond 33? I'm not sure, but I guess I'll have to ask him. But protagonism is not self-assertion. It's not about me, look what I can do, or anything like that. It is Christ's incarnation continuing through us in the world today. We know this, right? We are his hands and we are his feet. That is an incarnational spirituality. It's a way of seeing the world with Christ is present, still working. And that is a protagonist. Someone that can understand that. Someone that knows that I am his hands and his feet, and I put myself at his service because I know who I am, I know whose I am, and I know why he made me. So Now, there is, we tend to use the word leader and protagonist kind of interchangeably, but they're not exactly the same. You can be a leader. A leader, by definition, is someone who leads or commands a group, organization, or country. So leads or commands. Whereas a protagonist is the person who lives the mission. They are aware of Christ in themselves. The leadership may follow, but a protagonist begins with identity and mission, whether they formally lead ministry or not, right? So someone who is married, who is a stay-at-home mom, who doesn't lead any 50 ministries in the parish, who lives her vocation faithfully, is a protagonist in her faith, right? She doesn't have to lead a Bible study. She doesn't have to lead a small group. She doesn't have to lead a bunch of other things. She is a protagonist in her faith. She is moving that story forward with her children, with her household, with her friends, with her family members. So a leader is someone who, you can be a leader, you can be an effective leader and not be a protagonist, right? I'll be radical. Adolf Hitler was a very effective leader. He was not a protagonist. He was not advancing God's story of salvation. That was not his call. That was not his recognition. So I'm going to share with you a couple of stories of young leaders, of young protagonists. So we'll begin here. So this is the parish of Our Lady of Mount Virgin in Garfield, New Jersey. So it's part of this archdiocese, and my husband and I ministered there for a few years, for about 5. And so we have this group of teens, we call them TLC. A couple years ago, for Continuing the Journey, I did a breakout and talked all about the TLC, which is Teen Leadership Council, not the group, okay? All right, so the Teen Leadership Council, so these were our teen leaders, and basically, actually, we had high schoolers, so this was our core team. High schoolers, 2 young adults, my husband and I. The high schoolers were not necessarily seniors. We also had, and you'll see her right there smiling, pinning something on the wall, Miss Natalie. So Miss Natalie, we called her Nat. So Miss Natalie was in 7th grade. And her brother and her sister were part of the ministry, were part of the TLC. And so when she actually started 7th grade, her mom was like, you know, we used to meet with the TLC once a month for formation. Basically, we formed them, and they did everything else. I am not exaggerating when I say that the last year in ministry, all I did was held the keys. I opened the door. They set everything up. They got the tech. They ran the meetings because they planned the meetings. And then I just made sure that they cleaned up, and then I just had to make sure that the lights were off and the door was locked. Miss Natalie, their mom was like, because the other 2 are with you on this one Sunday a month, can Miss Natalie just be with you? She's not going to do the ministry stuff. We used to do 8th through 12th grade. But can she at least stay with you guys? I'm sure mom was like, yes, a break-free babysitting. Woohoo! And we're like, all right, bring her over. So Miss Natalie is a spunky child, or was a spunky child, and she said, okay, I'm going to be your intern. And I'm like, okay, so Miss Natalie, you're my intern. So Miss Natalie, as my intern, learned where all the paper was, how to make copies, how to log into the computer, how to do all the things. Miss Natalie, if I told Miss Natalie, hey, Natalie, go tell the boys to set up the table, she'd be like, boys, set up the table, right? That was Miss Natalie. So Miss Natalie did all the things, paperwork, so you talk about administrative assistant, that was Miss Natalie, right? As a 7th grader, that's what she could do, that's what she wanted to do, and I said, go for it. Halfway through her 7th grade year, I said, you know, Miss Natalie can come and be part of the ministry and our meetings and whatnot. And so in the meetings, then she gave herself a promotion. She was no longer my intern, she was my assistant. And so Miss Natalie, my assistant, did the same thing. She made sure that the boys were doing what they were supposed to be doing. She made sure that papers were, copies were made. And I would say, oh, Miss Natalie, can you make sure that we have copies of this? She would come down. They'd be stapled. They would be like, she would go beyond what I asked her. I need copies. And she'll go make copies. She will staple it. A 7th grader. Don't ever wait. Don't ever wait to engage and begin the journey of protagonism and acting that in young people just because they're not the seniors or the juniors, right? I know that it becomes a thing, and I think for me, being in Pastoral Juvenil Hispana and like being more more English Anglo ministry, one of the things I notice is because protagonism is such a core in Pastoral Juvenil, they put you to work the moment you walk through the door, right? Whereas in English, I find that people tend to wait until they're the older teens to serve the younger teens. But what that does is it makes it like you have to get somewhere first before you can serve, before you can be a person of service. We were born people of service, right? Servant leadership means I serve. That's my identity, that's who I am. So I'm all for get them young, and the younger, the better. All right, the next group of kids, so this is from our youth, I know it's a mouthful, so bear with me. Youth Co-Leadership Protagonism Initiative, or YCOPI, YCOPI, as in why copy anyone else when God made you unique in the world for a unique mission. We had no idea we were channeling St. Carlo Acutis, so kudos, woohoo! So why copy is a formation initiative that we started in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. We're about to kick off nominations for the 3rd cohort. We worked it, they're not here yet, but make sure you talk to them, our friends, Good Faith. We basically took a program they have called Next Level, and I said, how do we do this as an archdiocesan thing? And so we crafted this, it's called YCOPI. YCOPI is an accompaniment protagonism model of ministry through the lens of Catholic social teaching. These teens go through formation, they go through a discernment process, and through that discernment process, they also have to look at their parish communities and see what is a need that the Lord is highlighting, and how is He asking me to respond. They each have adults that walk with them through this process. The adult also receives formation in acompañamiento. And what does it mean to be on the passenger seat, not the driver's seat? Right? What does that mean and what does that look like? At the end of the formation, this process is really to guide them to create a mission for their community. Through that process, one thing that we emphasize a lot, like every time we gather together in person, this happens, and it's Eucharistic adoration. Because we want them to be absolutely certain, sure, and know to the core of their being that everything they do comes from the Eucharist and goes back to the Eucharist, right? Because we participate in His protagonism. It is God's story. I am a key part in it, but it's His, right? It is His. And so these are 3 of our teens. The first one is Margus. He's over there. Their mission is to put the C back in CYO. So in their parish, they want to infuse their sports, their Catholic sports, with Catholic capital letters, all of it highlighted, neon lights, beep, 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 flashing. So that's the mission that he saw that God wanted him to respond to. He's a sports kid, and he's like, you know what? We don't have enough of our Catholic identity in our Catholic youth organization. Not, as my vicar says, crush your opponent. That is not what that means. In the middle, we have Fiona. Fiona goes to public school, and her mission, what she feels passionate about, what she sees the Lord asking her to do as a mission right now, is to bring peers that are not in the faith into the faith. And she wants to do that through a lot of serving opportunities, because she says that's how she found her personal Christ. And so she wants to focus on human dignity, conversations about human dignity, serving in order to draw her peers into the faith. On this side, channeling my Vanna White, on this side, we have Olivia. Olivia is accompanied by her sister Emily, and Olivia, her mission has become bring teens, bring her peers to the Eucharist. That's her mission. That's what she wants to do. She wants to create an action plan. She wants to create a mission where she's able to bring peers to the feet of Christ, specifically in the Eucharist. I think she's a 9th grader. Okay. Next, I'm going to show you, so I've told you about their missions. There's another group from another parish, Miss Maria, Edward, and Gabriel, and I'm going to have you hear their mission, or them telling their mission.
Our mission is helping or spreading awareness upon the situation of immigrants. We decided that we were going to start like a small fundraiser so we can help the immigrants in need, especially the homeless, and as well as spreading like what rights they have.
We actually kind of started already. We went down to Philly not too long ago, trying to interview people and to get their perspective of the situation and how they feel about it. And we're gonna try to publish that and share it around social media so more people can see what others have said about it.
And we also are trying to get Father Anthony to give his opinion plus the education.
The job is theirs. I'm just here for the support, and I'm impressed by how much they've done and how much they're continuing to do.
So those are our St. Lawrence is the parish. It's majorly Hispanic parish, a lot of undocumented immigrants. So they're living this reality. They're seeing their parents, they're seeing family members, they're seeing friends, and they're saying, God is calling us to help. How do we help? So they have a threefold, at this point, they have a threefold thing for their plan, for their mission. One, as they said, was to create videos with awareness for people to be educated and to listen to the stories of people, what's really going on personally, right? Because it can become sort of abstract sometimes, some issues, and they want to make it personal. They also want to do fundraising so that they can help with packages, with things for those that are immigrants, undocumented, and homeless. And so they have these twofold, and then the third one, something related to that as well. But that's the mission that they feel called to. So it's not that they are being formed and saying, my mission is just, not that there's anything wrong with just collecting cans and taking them to my food bank. They want to make real change. They want to affect people. They want to see people change. They want to see people transform. I am a huge believer, and I'm assuming that if you're here that you believe the same as me. If we actually enacted the protagonism of every young person in the church, the world would change overnight. Amen? Amen? Yes, absolutely. So let's plug them into the wall. I don't know, whatever we're doing. All right, next. So we have, this is from our first cohort. So it's really about this process of becoming a protagonist really also enacts in them, in young people, and we can go back to even thinking about our own story. It also causes transformation within us. So this is Emily. Emily found that she was a key player in engaging her peers, in evangelization. Very interestingly enough, when we had one of our deep dives, and we had our conversation, so it was the youth were having a conversation, the adults were having a conversation separately, and so I asked the questions like, how are you feeling about your mission, about engaging your mission, starting your mission, all the things. And so she goes, I feel excited and scared at the same time. She said, scared because I have always helped. We're talking about a kid that's been engaged in her faith. She participates in things in church and whatever, and volunteers. She says, I've always helped, but I have never led. I've always helped, but I've never led. So then I said, do you feel like you have the support you need to be able to lead? And she said, yes, I do. Right? So very, very important. Just because they help does not mean they see themselves as key agents in the story of salvation, that they're capable of leading, that they are capable of imagining, creating, designing, whether it flops or whether it doesn't flop. Because I believe that even if it flops, if we do things and if they do things and we teach them to do things with faithfulness, God will bless it one way or another, right? Because he sees beyond what we see, and so I see a flop, God sees roses. Good for him, right? That's how that works. The next person that we have is Luke. Luke was also part of that first cohort. Luke said, before my copy, I easily felt isolated. Now I feel socially connected with other youth and it gave me a chance to encounter the Lord and get closer to him. Luke is not a single child. Luke belongs in a family of 8. He's somewhere in the middle. Luke is a sacristan at his parish. Before doing this, he was a sacristan at his parish. He had keys. He was in charge of getting things done. And yet, he felt isolated. Another one of our teens said something very similar. Not so much that she felt isolated, but she said that she found her voice. She found her voice. Her mom tells us that in this one, her name is Melanie. She said at the parish, I don't remember, there was some event happening somewhere, and they thought, and they were like, oh, we want to take some youth. And then the adults were like, I don't know if any youth are going to go, because that's how we start with what we don't have. And Melanie goes, no, I'll get them. Melanie went out and filled a bus, a 50-passenger bus with teenagers. When every adult said, we're not going to get teens to go to this thing. And Melanie says that one of the things that she appreciates the most about this process of engaging her protagonism is finding out that she has a voice, a powerful voice that can make a difference. Right? A powerful voice that can make a difference. In her parish, they did not have youth ministry before, they do now. In her parish, they had altar servers, not a lot. They say now they have so many. Because Melanie learned that she had a voice, a key, important role to play in the story of salvation that God is writing in her and through her. And she's bringing peers along for the ride. The next slide, or the next person I want you to meet is Joey. He's the guy with the blue shirt. Joey was part of the previous National Youth Advisory Council from the National Federation for Catholic Youth Ministry. Say that 3 times, you get a prize. Maybe somebody will give you a bottle of wine. All right, so NFCYM's, we call it NIAC, National Youth Advisory Council. So I'm, as part of the Focus Area 3, championing Focus Area 3 for NFCYM, understanding youth as protagonists, the National Federation, we started this National Youth Advisory Council. Teens they're nominated and they are selected from all over the United States. So we meet on Zoom and we have to accommodate across, we have to take into consideration all the time zones, which is a lot of fun. Because then every time they send something, it's like, wait, what time zone is this? ET, CT, PT, OT, whatever. So the NIAC that year, this was actually from last year in August, got invited by CRS, by the board of CRS, to do not an immersion week. It was a synodal delegation to Ghana, Africa. So we got to go to Ghana. There we go. And we got to see firsthand the work of CRS in a foreign country. So we were there for about a week and a few days. This is in the northern part. We went mainly to the northern part of Ghana, which is a lot of the work of CRS happens to be there because it's the poorest part of the country. And we visited a refugee camp. Now, these refugees are persons crossing the border, the northern border of Ghana, because they are fleeing extreme jihadist war and persecution, etc. The camp was originally made so that the refugees would be there maybe a month, maybe 2, just to kind of get them on their feet and then they move on. Some of the refugees have been there for 4, 5 years. Most of the refugees that are there are women and children because the men, the husbands, usually tend to leave and go to the south of the country, south of Ghana, because that's where most of the work is. So you have a lot of women and children. Because of the fact that this was never meant to be a very permanent, you stay here for a very long time kind of place, their living conditions, so their homes are, I don't know if you've ever seen, when natural disasters happen and it's like these tents that are made of, they look like plastic tents. That's where they live. There's no floor. They have mudslides when it rains a lot. Guess where the mud goes? And guess what they're sleeping in? Right? So, just got my 10 minutes, hurry up. All right, so Joey was so transformed by this experience. He was so impacted. Joey came back and raised over $3,000 and built 25 beds. That's what you see at the bottom right. 25 beds with mattresses, bought 42 bags of rice and salt. His father and him also pitched in and bought real soccer balls for the kids. Joey went back. The ones on the right, Joey went back to deliver all this with his dad. Joey now has a website. You can visit it. I encourage you to do so. It's called buildhopeghana.com. If anything, you can come to me. He has items that you can buy that directly go to the refugees. He is currently in the process of getting approval to be a 501c nonprofit. He is assembling a board of directors, and he's looking to engage youth as ambassadors in this process. By the way, did I mention that he was a high schooler? When we allow our young people to really be immersed in the truth in the work of the church, without fear of like what they may see, what they may not see, but to just experience the truth and the beauty of the church. And then we open up the door for them to engage and make real difference. They will, right? They will. So how do we foster this protagonism in young people? This is almost, again, listen, teach, send. This is the same process as missionary discipleship. First and foremost, there needs to be encounter. You cannot be part of the story of God if you have no idea that God exists, because then you don't know that that's his story, right? So we have to provide encounter, opportunity for encounter, Eucharistic encounter doing, serving others so that they can encounter God and Jesus in themselves. They can encounter the Holy Spirit, the work of the Spirit in others. Formation and equip them. In the Listen, Teach, Send framework, it says all Christian formation consists of entering more deeply into the kerygma, the aim of which is intimacy with Christ. I also say, so give them that. Yes, all the things, all the Catholic things, but also skill sets, right? How do you stand in front of a group of people and talk? So for like our Y Copy teens, we just did a session on the pastor pitch because they have to present this to their pastors and their pastoral staffs and all the things. So we actually do a whole formation on how do you do that, right? Very practical skills. If we're going to tell them to do something, let's literally teach them how to do it. And the last, space to do. The space for them to do it, to be motivated, to go where Christ wants them to go. We also do not want to forget that we want to make sure that they are, that accompaniment is taking place. This is a walking alongside with, that we are empowering them, that we are encouraging them, and don't forget to challenge them. Don't forget to challenge them. And that this is not the work of one person, but the whole community. As a minister, one of the roles is not just to engage the young people, because there's too many of them. It's to engage the community and transform our parish's community so that every adult in that seat, every adult that comes, every come that participates, see themselves just as responsible for every young soul that walks in or that serves their dinner in the local restaurant or that pumps their gas or whatever it is, that they see themselves also as true agents of ministry with youth. We cannot raise up an army of youth without an army of adults to walk with them. So I think that's a bigger challenge. But it is important and we must do it. We have to engage them for their sake, for Christ's youth's sake. I'm very proud that my Spanish led me through. All right, next slide. So I love these quotes from Pope Francis. Is Christus Vivit. This is 174, 178, and I just took a piece. 174, the young want to be protagonists of change. Please do not leave it to others to be protagonists of change. Through you, the future enters into the world. This quote changed the trajectory of a young woman's life and a young woman's mission in our white copy. Her name is Rosario, one of our white copy participants from our first cohort. She had one mission in mind. She saw this and she said, wait, I can make a difference. Like, I can make a real difference. So she actually became the youth minister of her parish, right? Young friends, especially if you're here and you're young at heart. Huh? Young friends, don't wait until tomorrow to contribute your energy, your audacity, and your creativity. And I say to those that are maybe not as young, don't let them wait until tomorrow to contribute their energy, their audacity, and their creativity to changing the world. Your youth is not an in-between time. You are the now of God. And He wants you to bear fruit. I'm going to take 3 minutes. Is that okay? I'm going to take 3 more minutes. Okay, so the next slide. So there's our 3 questions. Feel free in your tables, because I would love for you to actually be able to at least discuss, share, pick one, or, if you talk really fast, you can do all 3. I don't know. All right, but we started late, so I'm just going to sneak a couple extra minutes. Okay, so I'm going to be quiet for like a couple of minutes, and then I want you to just kind of share a little bit in your tables and go. All right, we're bringing it back. You can take a photo, and you can continue the conversation. You don't have to end it here. I encourage you to please continue the conversation and make an action plan out of it. Not just let's talk about it, but let's put some action to each one of these, right? When we're talking about what shifts in mindsets, well, what are the mindsets that need to be shifted? And then what can you do to intentionally help shift that, right? So let's make those lists, let's make those action plans, because it's great to gather a lot of information. I say youth ministers, we're great at hoarding things, including information. We hoard all sorts of information, and then it gets lost and buried somewhere. So let's make some action plans, and let's make some real change with our young people. So last but not least, I want to share with you, I found this very interesting. This is actually from, next slide. It's coming. All right, so it's from a blog post by a writer. So it's not a religious context. It's just strictly for writers. It's called 5 Ways to Keep Your Protagonist Proactive. And it'll come up, but I'm going to get started because I'm on a time limit. Okay. Number 1, but I think these are very applicable. Give the protagonist a goal that matters to them. Says the struggle to achieve a series of goals is what creates a novel's plot. In every scene, the protagonist should want something. And the second part is why they want it. Number 2, make the protagonist part of the action. A question is, if you took your protagonist out of a scene, would the event in the scene still occur? Would it change how the scene unfolded? If not, that's a red flag. Your protagonist isn't adding anything to the scene, and plot is happening regardless of what they do. Number 3, make the protagonist influence what's happening, right? Influencers. A proactive protagonist tries to direct how the scene turns out. If your protagonist's actions have no effect on the outcome of the scene or the major events of the plot, there's a good chance they're not doing enough in the story to cause the story to happen. Number 4, give the protagonist specific expectations that drive the story. A protagonist who goes somewhere to see what happens with no expectations of what that might be is a sneaky type of reactive protagonist. They're simply waiting for the answer to fall out of the story and into their lap. If your protagonist spends a lot of time hoping to find a clue about what to do next, try giving them a more concrete plan to work with. And number 5, let the protagonist make decisions that affect where the plot goes. Proactive protagonists make decisions that affect the plot, even if they have lousy options to choose from. Having to make a choice forces the protagonist to act, and the action moves the plot and story forward. If your protagonist rarely chooses the next step, or the choices aren't really a choice because there's only really one option, you might have a protagonist who isn't taking control of the plot. I think from all of those, it can be very applicable for us to be able to engage our young people to remember, almost like a measuring. If they're just spectators, they're not being protagonists, things are not moving forward. The story that they're meant to write, the part of the story that they're meant to write is not moving forward. So I leave you with this some questions just for you to think about. Your own protagonism. What is your story that has unfolded, that has made you the protagonist you are today? I know for me, it started as a teenager with adults that said you can be in charge of things, with being a part of a team that put together weekend retreats, diocesan weekend retreats at the age of 16, where only 5 people were above the age of 21, and those were the cooks and the men in charge. That was it. Everybody else was from the age of 16 to 21. We were also at 17, my mom said, you guys are good, and she left the ministry to myself and peers, again, between the ages of 15 and about 22. We were the only group from Orlando, Florida, who went to World Youth Day in Denver, Colorado with JP2, who did not have anyone in their team above the age of 22, and every single one of us survived. So, I say that because we all have that story. Take time to pray with that story. What are the gems and the things that brought you to where you are today? You know, when the Lord asked me to work full time for him, which means work more, make less, in layman's terms, it wasn't a hard decision. It wasn't a hard discernment. Because I have known since I was 15, 14 years old that I was the church. And so when God called me to do this full time, it's like, okay, this is just who I am. It's not what we do. This is not what I do. This is just who I am, right? And I think our young people need to hear that, need to know that, and need to be allowed the space to live that. Thank you so much for the gift of your time. Thank you for the gift of your protagonism. And let's go get them.